The blackout happened years ago. At first it seemed like a normal blackout that would get fixed in a few hours. But after a few days the power was still off and people were starting to get worried. They shrugged it off, at first thinking it was just taking longer than expected. The power never returned, however. No one had ever gotten any answers from the electricity company, and soon the company stopped answering calls altogether. This left everyone in the dark and confused as to why the company didn't answer them. Omri sat near the bedroom window, watching as the lights of the surrounding houses turned off one by one, covering the street below with darkness. He sighed. It was only a matter of time until the power in his parents' house died out, and they would find him. He shuddered at the thought of them. He had barely managed to escape from them last time, and he doubted that he'd be able to do it again. From outside, he could hear the frantic screaming of people as the creatures found them. He covered his ears, looking away from the window and hoping it would stop soon. The lights inside the bedroom flickered, until they finally shut off for good. Almost instantly, something crashed into the window, sending a loud bang throughout the house. Omri jolted back, causing the thing outside of the window to raise its head sharply and stare right at Omri. The thing screeched loudly. Then it started to bang its head against the window, causing the glass to crack and shatter into thousands of shards. Omri backed himself into a corner, trying his best to distance himself from the thing that was now inside the bedroom and looking for him. The thing stepped over the shards, and towards the corner that Omri was hiding near. He tensed up as the thing drew closer, and soon he could feel its hot breath. Omri closed his eyes, expecting the painful death that would happen. Minutes passed, and still nothing happened. Hesitantly, Omri opened his eyes and found the thing inches away from him. He suppressed the urge to scream, staying as frozen as he could. The thing began to growl, then rushed out of the room, and a distant crash was heard downstairs. Omri let out the breath he had been holding in, his entire body shaking with fear. He couldn't believe that he had survived that thing. It was right in front of his face, and yet the thing didn't know where he was. It was almost like it couldn't see him. Omri grabbed a flashlight and shakily made his way to the door. He didn't know if the coast was clear or not, but he needed to get out of here before another one of those things came back to finish him off for good. Outside was completely flooded with darkness. Omri crept through the abandoned streets as best as he could with the low light. He wanted to turn the flashlight on, but feared that would draw more attention to him than if the light stayed off. Around him he could hear the crunch of bones and the occasional snarling from the things. Omri could see the outline of a car in the distance. This could possibly be a way out of this place. One of the things rushed past him, then stopped in its tracks. Omri also froze. The thing swiftly turned its head towards Omri. It looked around for a bit, then turned and ran the opposite direction. Omri let out a sigh. That was a little too close for comfort. He continued towards the car as slowly and as quietly as he could to avoid drawing the attention of the things. Omri eventually reached the car. He twisted the handle and opened the car door. He crawled in, quietly shutting the door once he was safely inside. He didn't feel too safe inside the car, but it was safer than being outside with those things. There was a sudden movement from inside the car. Omri spun to look at the back seat. He expected to see one of those things, but instead he saw another person. The person crawled over to the passenger seat carefully. "Do you have the keys?" the person asked frantically. Omri shook his head. "No," he said. "I just hoped that the keys would still be in here." "Great," the person retorted. "Now I've got to find the key. Maybe it's in one of the houses nearby." The person opened the car door, then carefully closed it. Omri watched as the person inched his way towards one of the houses. Omri opened and closed the car door, then followed the person to the house. "What are you doing?" the person whispered, once they noticed Omri following behind them. "I can do this myself." Omri looked around the dark street. "Two people searching for the keys are better than one. We'll be able to cover more ground that way." The person sighed. "All right, just don't attract the attention of whatever those things are. I don't feel like dying today." The two of them stepped inside the house. The faint smell of blood could be detected in the air, and the sounds of something eating could be heard from upstairs. The person turned to Omri. Let's search down here. We'll avoid going upstairs for the time being. The person headed towards the kitchen. Omri searched through the living room, trying to avoid knocking something over. He felt around the couch and tables, but couldn't find anything that resembled a key. A loud crash suddenly sounded from the kitchen. Omri froze. From upstairs he could hear the thing stop eating. Then it came crashing down the stairs and into the kitchen. Omri grabbed an object from the table, then slowly inched his way towards the front door. It was a good thing that it was still open. He threw the object outside, then backed away from the door. The thing rushed out of the door almost instantly, growling loudly as it did so. The person emerged from the kitchen. "That was some good thinking," they whispered. "Now we can search upstairs." Omri and the person climbed up the stairs. The smell of rust was stronger here. The person flicked a lighter on, illuminating the area just enough to look around. "Let's look around quickly," the person said. "The keys have got to be here somewhere." Omri followed the person around the rooms, but they couldn't find anything. The person cursed under their breath. "Great, the keys aren't in here," the person said. "Now we've got to search the other houses." "What if the key is with the person's body?" Omri asked. "Maybe they put the keys in their pocket and ran inside the house when the things chased them." The person thought about this for a moment. "I hate the thought of searching a dead body, but you might just be right." Omri followed the person into the hallway. From the faint light of the lighter he could see the body lying on the ground. The body was ripped to shreds. Blood and organs were spewed all over the floor and walls. The person rummaged through the pockets of the body's clothing. They pulled out a key, turning to Omri. "Let's get out of here before another one of those things comes back." The person and Omri stepped out onto the front porch. The growls of many creatures could be heard from all around the two. Omri's grip tightened around the flashlight. Then he came up with a plan. He turned the flashlight on, pointing it in every direction. The things darted away from the beam of the flashlight, screeching louder as if they were in pain. Omri and the person ran to the car. They both shut the car doors once inside. The person started up the car. The headlights turned on, illuminating the things outside for just a moment. The things were completely dark and shadowy, their eyes glowing red in the light of the headlights. The person floored it, driving away from the things as fast as possible. The sun was rising, illuminating the road and everything around it. The person let up on the gas pedal, slowing the car down. They pulled into a gas station, parking near a gas pump and turning the car off. "We should be safe now," they said. "Those things won't attack when the sun is up." Omri nodded. Now that there was light, he could see what the person driving looked like. The person had short, dark brown hair with brown eyes. He wore a gray plaid jacket, white shirt, black ripped jeans, and gold-colored sneakers. "Let's stick together," the person said, turning to Omri. "We might just survive if we help each other out. Oh, and I'm Antonio." Omri introduced himself, then said, "We need to think of a plan before the sun sets and those things return to start hunting us." Antonio nodded. "I think there's a city a couple of miles around here," he said. "Let's get some supplies, refuel the car, and find the city. There might still be some power there." Omri stepped into the store while Antonio refueled the car outside. The shelves inside the store were knocked over and all the items were strewn across the floor. He grabbed a backpack from the ground and shoved food and water inside. He swung the backpack over his shoulder, making his way outside. Once he was inside the car, Antonio started the car and drove out of the gas station. "I hope the city still has power," he said. "Maybe then there will be other people who can help us out." "Yeah, but what are we going to do if the city doesn't have power and everyone is dead?" Omri asked. Antonio shrugged. "Then I guess we'll just keep on driving until we reach somewhere that's safe. I mean, there's no way that the entire world is experiencing this blackout, right?" Omri didn't know what to say. He hoped that this only affected a small area, but there was a lingering feeling of dread inside him. If the entire world was affected by this blackout, then there wasn't a place that was safe, not for long at least.
I have something to confess. I know it's stupid, but I've always hated having my curtains open. If I opened them, it meant at some point I would have to close them. Not during the day. I mean, come on, I'm not a baby or anything. It was just having to close them at night, when it was pitch black and dark. Reflective glass gives nothing away as to what could be lurking behind the window's mirrored surface. Who's watching? What's out there? You can't see out, but everything out there can see in. I know it's silly and immature. It's just I couldn't control my runaway anxiety. I would think these horrible, loud thoughts inside my head. Everyone is wrong. There's something out there. In all honesty, I always expected to be halfway through pulling the heavy draped material closed when, out of the darkness, a giant, fanged, drooling werewolf would jump out, snarling up at my window, teeth scraping on the glass, baying for my blood, eyes outsized with a glare full of loathing. My heart races just thinking about it. And yes, I'm an adult. And no, I don't know how closing curtains would protect me against anything other than an attack by the giant carry moths, which get drawn to any light source. But every night, every goddamn night, the hairs on my neck would stand up with the whole goosebumps, handshaking, and heart-beating faster regime. I couldn't get past my anxiety. I couldn't believe there was nothing out there. I couldn't stop being paranoid. Okay, I lived by myself. That didn't help. And I admit to being an introvert who loved living on a quiet bush block in the middle of nowhere. Yes, I know. That probably didn't help either. And I was required to go to a therapist. Trust me, he really didn't help. This experienced and highly qualified expert said things like, "You need to learn to control your stress. Stress makes you go into self-protection mode. It shuts you off. It makes you too cautious and fearful, too hard to reach. Look at what your last episode did to your life. Do you really want that to happen again?" He was such a twat. But sadly, I had no choice. He was the only therapist within a reasonable driving distance. I kept thinking I should make the 3-hour drive to Perth, but I couldn't stand the traffic and the people. It was just too much noise, too many people. I wish in hindsight that I just pushed myself, sigh. But unfortunately I continued to go once a week and was forced to listen to him sit there and plan and then inflict my aversion therapy. There he sat in his leather grey chair, smiling like a patronizing idiot looking over his black half-rimmed glasses, grey hair slicked down in a side part to cover his balding dome. The first step, he explained, was for me to leave one curtain open at night and then build up from there. By the next appointment, he wanted me to have all the curtains open in the house, even in my bedroom. That's right. Leave my curtains open, undress with my curtains open, go to sleep with my curtains open. You get my drift? Creepy. During the next session, he wasn't pleased when I informed him that all the curtains were open. All? He questioned with his intonation bordering on condescending. I had to admit, not all. Just the bedroom one was closed. Honestly, all I wanted to do was stand up and slap him in the face when he corrected me with a tut-tut. How do you expect to overcome your childish fears, your prior episode, if you don't confront your fantasies, your unfounded fears like an adult? I sat and squirmed on the uncomfortable plastic designer chair he made all his patients sit on. His childish references burned a hole in my spirit. Staring back at him, seething with anger and contempt, was my only form of retribution. You know, it's not my favourite thing to come here once a week and be told how to live my life. He continued with an amused sneer plastered over his features. I understand, but this is your doctor's order. You have to do this if you want to remain out of hospital. I hated this guy so much. Yeah, I forgot to tell you that one. Too much stress and an overactive imagination sent me spiralling for a month before my mother found me in her garage, hiding in a corner, waving a big kitchen knife about, telling her the little people were after me. Off to hospital for a nice quiet rest. Here's a question. Why, when some people have breakdowns, do they get to have visions of little fairies dancing at the bottom of their garden? And when I have a breakdown, I get creepy little feral pixies with black, slit eyes and huge bat ears sliding under my door, trying to slit my throat in the middle of the night. How is that fair? My therapist's voice drew me back into his dingy office full of hunting trophies and photos showing the big groupers he'd caught. Tonight I want you to embrace your fear. He smiled with lecherous delight. When your curtains are drawn back, open the window and then you must stand naked in the moonlight. "Excuse me, you want me to do what the hell?" My levels of discomfort rose so high I thought I would vomit. Who was this guy? What kind of a weirdo was he? Who the hell would stand buck naked at their window for everyone to see? This sicko needed to be reported. He smirked. "I can see you're uncomfortable with my suggestions." He didn't move, just sat perfectly still, assessing my every reaction. "Well, who the bloody hell wouldn't be?" was my angry reply. "That's just weird and creepy and downright unprofessional. You needed to be reported for unbecoming behaviour." The thought of 3 hours in a car and a city full of noisy people wasn't as bad as sitting through another session with this creepoid flourished in my mind. "Samantha, you live by yourself on an old remote dairy farm. No one will see you. Your bedroom is your last bastion of safety. Welcome the world into it. You'll see you have nothing to fear. If you stand naked, you are at your most vulnerable. By opening the window, you create such a heightened experience that your fears will be crushed under the weight of your success." He crossed his legs and wrote something scribbly on his notepad, then looked up with his bloodshot brown eyes. "This is aversion therapy, Samantha, not give me an excuse to fail therapy. Stupid does as stupid is told to do. So, that very night I stood in my dressing gown in front of my black reflective window with the creepoid's words ringing in my ears. This is aversion therapy, not give me an excuse to fail therapy. I'm bone tired of always being afraid. Frightened I'll go over the edge again and start seeing things. Start believing again that I'm being stalked. No one will see, no one will see. This isn't weird, it's aversion therapy." The pretty pink curtains which have hung in my bedroom from the house's previous owner's occupation were flung wide open. My bedroom was reflected back at me, confronting me with my worried glances. Slowly, as if I'd become automated, void of all emotions, I pulled the cord of my dressing gown, loosening the cloth, making it easy to slide the soft, enveloping material off my shoulders, down my spine and onto the floor. I watched my naked self, standing in the mirrored reflection, breathing deeply as anxiety threatened to take over. Do it now, do it. Success, not failure. The mantra was repeated as I took the 3 steps to the window and placed my hand on the cold metallic handle. Without time to listen to my treacherous heart thundering away in my chest or my mind which screamed, "Don't!" The heavy wooden window with its white peeling paint was pushed out wide, forcing me to lean out into the cold air, my skin rippling under the night's icy fingers. I stood there, leaning forwards, hands gripping the windowsill, drinking deeply from the cup of success. No longer was I bound to hide in my own home like a trapped rodent. I embraced the night. The thrill from my accomplishment rang out loud and clear. Drunken with success, I raced around the house, opening every window I could find. Then it was the front door's turn. With a loud bang ringing out into the night as the old solid wooden door hit the front wall, I boldly walked out onto the grey wooden veranda. Out and under the embrace of the moonlight shining down, I celebrated my newfound freedom. The shackles of fear which had held me captive broke and fell away. The cold night bit at every exposed part of my naked body, but it had no effect on my buoyant mood. "Welcome, moonlight, welcome night, welcome into my home." The warmth of freedom from fear filled me with internal heat. Onto the dew-covered lawn I ran, laughing, twirling, blowing the moon a kiss. Freedom! I'm so glad you took my advice, Samantha. It's so wonderful to truly see you free. Fear returned in a tsunami wave. Out from the inky blackness he strode on clawed, sinewed, and monstrous legs. People often think it's only vampires who can't come into your home uninvited. It's not. I learnt that the hard way. My therapist was naked but not entirely human. Hair covered his lean, skeletal body, distorted and twisted, so the articulation of his knees and ankles bent backwards. Stalking awkwardly out of the darkness showed he belonged on 4s. Skin now goosebumped and rippled for an entirely different reason. I knew you were special as soon as I'd read about your visitations. I lusted for you. Salivation drooled out of the corners of his jaws as huge canine teeth pushed out and through his squirming gums as he launched himself onto me. If only I hadn't opened my curtains. I don't remember much of the attack. I'm thankful for that small mercy. My memories came flooding back in full force when I slammed into my old wardrobe, making the doors bang and rattle against the force of my body. A bellowing of fear continued until my throat became raw and hoarse. Part of me, kept safe and quiet in a dark recess of my mind, sat and listened to the terrified animal in our bedroom. Crying took over, soul-shuddering crying, making my body convulsion under its force. I'll admit, it took me a while before I could crawl off the floor and into the shower to wash the blood away, and it took even longer for me to realize the hot water had run out. And now there are explanations for why we hide in our homes at night. It is wiser to remain afraid of the dark and everything that hides in it. There are reasons we should never let strangers in, but lock our doors and bar our windows. He was one of those reasons. I am one of those reasons. Keep the eye of darkness out. Keep your curtains shut. The floor is slick with puddles and wet wood from fallen branches as I make my way through the storm with only a newspaper over my head to shield me. Finally, I spot the lights in the alley of the one place I feel is safe from the whip of the weather. The single trees that stand in the distance fluff themselves warm with every cool breeze that lashes by. It's unnerving how their monstrous bodies loom over the street, smothering street lamps. Turning the corner, the bright, ugly lights of my sanctuary mark their glow into my eyes. My key is placed into the giant rusted metal door as I push it open with a thud and a creak. The apartment isn't much nicer than the roars of fall outside. It's cold and dark, and the only light I have to fill the tiny interior is a small lamp on a table that is ready to be thrown away or put out of its misery. I take off my jacket, whose arms are soaked, and throw it next to the sad lamp that I finally get to switch on. Once the light flutters on, the apartment's junk is luminous. Stacks and stacks of papers and unused books clutter the whole inside in a way that makes them look like tall creatures waiting for me to become defenseless. I head to the back of the room, past a piano that is way too big, and turn on my small yellow radio that is rusting as much as my front door. What comes out of the thing scares me in a way where I don't jump back, but immediately reach to turn it off. The notes were broken and out of tune, but the radio was using all its might to sputter out whatever it could, missing a few notes on the way, like a broken toy. Even though I turned it off, it keeps cracking out a tune in a key that makes cold blood run through my face. I turn the radio around to pull out a tab and batteries that are keeping me from being sane and place them on my unbalanced coffee table. The coldness of the floor seeps through my shoes as I make my way to a scrappy journal. My finger once again traces the lines of the cover before opening it to reveal messy drawings of shadowy figures and phrases that all scream "don't look." The creatures are all tall and lean but vary in features. Some have pointy fingers, some have holes for eyes, and some have legs that take up most of their body. Before I can flip to the 11th figure, my telephone rings. For a moment I am staring in horror at the sudden burst of sound, but then I finally pick up the phone. I say nothing. "Hello," is heard from a familiar voice in the speaker. A sigh of relief escapes me. "Dell," I answer back. "Hey, I was just making sure that you made it home without any episodes like last time." "I did. You must think I'm some nut since you're calling after that night." We have our moments, even if our moments consist of screaming about some shadow man following you. "Every moment counts," I say, letting a grin come through my voice. "Good night," he says with a laugh. I return the farewell before putting the phone back. The feeling of hanging up the one source of sound in the poorly lit space sends knots into my core. I bid the monster's demand and slip the book beneath 5 others. I feel vulnerable and very, very alone. Suddenly the angst of 1,000 eyes hits me, making me sit on my couch to make myself guarded. Breathing hard, I finally get myself to calm down. I'm not sure what starts this sudden feeling of despair, but it comes with a force as if my beating heart is being clenched in a tight fist. A soft melody of a piano starts to sink into my ears. I cave into the music, unguarded, to soak up every bit of sound I can get until I realize the state of my radio and the 3 batteries that taunt me on the table. I try to jump up to see the intruder, but I'm unable to move. My limbs stay frozen, even if I use all the strength I have to move them. My eyes dart around the room looking for anything, and my mouth hangs open since I'm unable to close it. My arm is just out of view, but I can see my fingers almost lifeless by my side, so I try to concentrate on moving them instead of panicking. It's no use. My eyes burn as my eyelids stay stuck. I'm losing hope. Becoming frustrated, I gather as much force as my body can handle and try to move, but still nothing. It feels as though I am hostage to my own body, that I've sunken into my own mind, and I no longer have control. My breathing becomes difficult as my heart races at the amount of force I have built up inside of me. Suddenly, the monster that has haunted my journals and my imagination appears in the doorway. Its long, shadowy body is half covered by the doorway, but I can see the way its long arms fall all the way past its knees and a half-white, sick smile. Immediately I try to thrust my hands over my eyes as I used to do to avoid the creature. It's the only way to get rid of it. I can't close my eyes, I can't run, I can hardly breathe. I am no match for what is slowly making its way towards me. I know now that I've been outplayed by the one thing I thought I knew how to easily avoid. Its lanky body towers above me, staring at me with the same smile plastered on its face. Those evil long arms wrap around my stiff neck. I can't break free. A tear escapes my wide eyes, staining my cheeks as I try to sustain my last breath.